I want to turn to our panel to specifically get into the subject at hand, and I want to introduce our guests. Starting with a longtime good friend, Jay Clayton. Jay joins us as the immediate past chairman of the Securities Exchange Commission, served from 2017 to 2020, and he's the current chairman of Apollo Management, over $500 billion under management. So he's got a lot going on in his life. Jay's a very highly in-demand speaker, a recognized financial and regulatory expert. There he is swearing in with congressional review. It'd be fun to ask about that. And you're all going to get a chance to ask Jay questions at the end of this as well. I remember watching that live, and some of those questions were very direct. So Jay's highly regarded for his opinion on blockchain technology and cryptocurrency innovation, and he also happens to be one heck of a good guy. So please help me welcome Mr. Jay Clayton. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Please
take a seat.
Assume the position.
All right.
Yeah. All right. And our next guest is John Bartleman, TradeStation Chief Executive Officer. TradeStation, right here based in Plantation, Florida, is a leading global expert in cryptocurrency. TradeStation is the parent company of several online brokerage firms and trading technology companies. And the company, as I said, headquartered here, has offices worldwide, and I think the firm is best known for its technical analysis software and electronic trading platform. In doing a little bit of additional research on John, I realized he's also basically the father of the crypto bull, commissioned that project and helped unveil it for South Florida. So John, would you please come up and join us? Welcome. And then finally, Bob Dennison. Bob is the president and founder of the recently acquired Dennison Yachts. Bob grew up right here in South Florida, and in researching Bob's background, I was fascinated to learn about the history of his family's business in yachting. His grandparents, I believe, came here on their honeymoon and decided to buy a shipbuilding business at the time, right around World War II era. And effectively, the Dennisons have been at the creation and at the very start of this tremendous yachting industry here in the greater Fort Lauderdale area. If anywhere you look, the industry is just massive, from the servicing, the provisioning, the staffing, the customers that come here, the owners that are here, like Super Yacht Village, where we'll go after this for an opening reception. And most recently, I think most significantly, Bob pioneered the use of cryptocurrency for yacht brokerage transactions. Bitcoin as a payment offering by Dennison. And last year, the brokerage firm opened a multi-currency account that accepts a dozen different currencies. And these options allow buyers to place payments into escrow funds, where the funds are then safe until the transaction is completed and distributed. So a man well ahead of his time in the yachting industry for sure, and a huge part of the fabric of this community and the yachting capital of the world. Please help me welcome Bob Dennison. Gentlemen, welcome. Thanks for being here. Exciting times. I think we've got regulation, transactional platform, and actual day-to-day transaction volume taking place right here in Broward County in a big way with yachts and super yachts. But I think I want to open just with a general question that I thought about on the way here, which is for each of you to talk about your aha moment with crypto. And mine has come more recently. I remember a good friend of mine back in 2014, I think, talking about crypto, and Townsend, here's what I'm doing. You should get in on this. You should get in on this. And I'm sure in your lives you've had the same thing. You've got crypto fury or crypto passionate friends. He invested $2,500 back in the day, and he reminds me every Thursday night we're on a simulator racing session, Thursday night sim session. He gives me his daily update. He's at a $4 million valuation for his crypto assets after that $2,500 investment. There's examples, I'm sure, in your own lives. But Jay, for you, that was my aha moment where I missed the boat, Bob. But what do you think that is for you in your background?
Well, I missed the boat as well. I had a good friend, was a very successful investor, and he said, why don't you just take like 1% or 0.5% of your investable assets and put it in crypto? This is like 2013. I didn't do it. But then when I got to the job as head of the Securities and Exchange Commission, it was apparent that lots of people were getting attracted to Bitcoin. And I was like, I better figure out what this is, what the market is, how it's used. And one of my aha moments was my wife and I were driving somewhere, and I was spending the entire time reading academic articles on Bitcoin. And she's like, "What the hell are you doing?"
Yeah.
It's like, well, there's just this, and from there, it was part of my, one of a number of things that were part of my sort of regular activities as chairman of the commission.
And John, for you, your TradeStation's been around a long time, but crypto since 2019, as I understand. Tell me about your aha moment. When did you realize this was for real? You had to be involved.
So we first really got deep into this in 2014. We were actually members of MIT Media Labs back then. They brought in a group of kids to teach us blockchain, teach us Bitcoin, and we're like, wow, yeah, this is really amazing. I really buy into the blockchain. Government's never going to allow Bitcoin to exist. No, not going to happen. So I didn't buy in then. But every quarter we have town hall meetings, and our employees would keep asking, when are we going to support crypto? When are we going to support crypto? I'm like, yeah, we'll get to it. By 17, we had lost a couple of engineers who had become millionaires mining Bitcoin. And I'm like, all right, fine, we gotta add this as an asset class. It's real, it's here. And I'd been trading it, because we're a trading firm, so of course I trade it instead of buying and holding it, which I should have done. But I've been in for a long time, and a huge backer of this. And as a firm, we've been strong proponents of this, for quite a long time now.
Yeah. And Bob, I mean, was there a transaction? Did some Russian hand you a USB drive, or how did this? What was the first moment for you?
Yeah, it was actually a weird thing. So my wife and I used to own the best coffee shop in Fort Lauderdale. At the time, it was Brew. And what makes my wife really happy, other than making the bed, which I'm really good at, is when I would help her at Brew. So I would get behind the register once in a while, and this guy said to me, "Do you guys take Bitcoin?" He had a coffee, and I said, "No, we don't." But I'm a little familiar with Bitcoin on CNBC and reading some books. And then in that moment, it occurred to me, this guy was looking for places that would accept crypto. We had, of course, the yachting business, and I said, a cup of coffee wouldn't be as significant, but maybe a yacht. So that week, we started to have a conversation with a company called BitPay, and we got signed up immediately.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you remember the first transaction?
Oh, yeah, it was a huge deal because all of my colleagues made fun of me. They thought it was like a marketing gimmick, and it truly wasn't. I was just waiting. And a guy from Chicago that was a tech guy called up and said, "I heard you guys take crypto, and I'd like to buy a yacht." And he didn't know how to buy a yacht. He just said, I want to buy one tomorrow. And I said, "No, we can't do that. This isn't a cup of coffee, you idiot." But we could. Well, we started the process with him, and it really was a neat thing. And it happened about 18 months after we announced it. We had our first sale.
And the seller was willing to accept, or did you basically escrow that crypto and then convert it? How did that work?
So there's a few companies that do this. At the time, BitPay was the biggest. They actually, for a 1% fee for the buyer, will convert it to USD or euros, which allows us to offer any of our listings and make it very safe for the seller. And that includes KYC and making sure that the transaction is very safe and secure.
Wow. I want to go back to a comment you made, John, which was in the early days saying, well, the government's never going to regulate this, and I'm out. This is wild, wild west. And Jay, I guess I throw it back over to you. Where do you think we stand in the trajectory of regulatory development in this space, internationally or domestically? You can take it either way.
John's comment is telling because I'll take you back to, say, early 2017. Most of the global financial regulators thought that crypto would die of its own weight. They were sort of like, well, we're not going to pay attention to that because it's not real, it's not going to happen, let's not. And I'm sure there are some of them that wish they had, whether to highly regulate or eliminate, but that's not what happened. And they got this momentum. Them regulators, I think, were deeply concerned, and many remain deeply concerned, and there are things to be concerned about. Like, we can come back to it, but in this country, we have a high level of protection of retail investors. Other countries as well, concerned that it's undermining that specifically and generally. But in the last, I would say, 18 months, there's been a recognition that the technology that underlies cryptocurrencies, but most of all, the effective use is something that's here to stay. Now, you guys probably know, probably better than I do, but it's 10, 15, 20, $50 billion worth of transactions globally take place every day with nobody complaining.
Yep.
In and out of USDC, crypto, et cetera. Very efficient. And so what you've now seen, and I'm going on, but what you've now seen is at the core of the financial system, people are asking, should we have tokenized treasury securities? Should we have tokenized commercial paper? Should we follow the technology that has been demonstrated by these first generation crypto assets into the core of the financial system? That's a complete 180. And so I think what you will see is stablecoins be the intersection, they already are, but be the regulated intersection of crypto as it's been with the traditional financial system. I don't know if
John,
that
how do you see
resonates
that?
with you guys. Or?
Well, it does, but I think, first of all, I think people lump crypto into too big of a bucket. I think we have to break it down. I see Bitcoin completely separate from everything else. And that truly store of value. It is a replacement of gold. It's the hardest currency the world has ever known. It's separate. It's immutable. It's actually, it's more of a currency or a money. Ethereum, Cardano, Solana, all these other layer one technologies are really competing with AWS. They're technology platforms building applications on the back of it, completely different from Bitcoin. And there are different types of transactions going on both, and you have thousands and thousands of crypto projects being developed and rolled out. Most of these are just like another company. They have a leadership team, they have developers, they're building a product for a certain use case that has nothing to do with Bitcoin. You just can't lump them in the same thing. And those are likely to be considered securities in a lot of cases. And this is where we as a firm need clarity. We're a regulated broker-dealer, a regulated futures commission merchant. We are regulated on the crypto side by multiple states and the federal government. We just need clarity on, all right, which one of these things is going to be regulated how? We work with the CFTC, we work with the SEC, we work with the states. I don't care. Just put it in one. And when you talk about like USDC stablecoin, people don't understand that's a totally different animal. Those are backed by, in this case, US dollars or some other currency.
And John, presumably your company has tremendous visibility into the rise in usage or crossover. So I'm curious, can you share with us what any of those numbers might look like? For instance, I don't know, percentage of traditional security customers that are starting to dabble in crypto on your platform. What does that look like?
So we're starting to we get two things. We have our legacy customers, and our customer base is generally more active, more sophisticated type of trader.
Yeah.
But we do have investors, and we have that group coming in, and in our platform you can actually transact and invest in any of these assets, all kind of seamless as a user. So we're introducing that group, and that's been a slow adoption. And these are not necessarily traders. Crypto is not really a trading vehicle. It's more to buy and hold for a lot of cases. But what we're also seeing is this younger generation of people who grew up with crypto, and they're coming in now and saying, well, I want to get into stocks or options. And some of them are starting to learn how to trade futures, because now crypto, Bitcoin futures are being traded, and that's a better trading vehicle.
Yeah.
So you're seeing a maturation of people as they're becoming aware, but I'm now starting to see the sort of masses of people, all right, now I need to learn. We're spending a lot of time as a firm just teaching people about blockchain, crypto, Bitcoin. What is this? Just like we're doing here, this is happening everywhere. I just came from a conference in Boston. The wealth management sector had a conference. These guys don't know what's going on in crypto. They really don't know. Mm-hmm. So it's, we're at the very early stage. I say we're still in the first inning of where this is going.
Bob, you sit in a really interesting place because I've been around the yachting world thanks to Fort Lauderdale and the boat show here for the last several years, and owning a yacht, enjoying the lifestyle that we all know is second to none, frankly, out on the water is always, almost always a celebration of success of some kind. How much are your customers, maybe on a percentage basis, how many are open to this as a currency for transactions in your world? Because I think of yacht ownership as almost like nest egg. I've succeeded. I'm winning. I'm buying myself a boat of whatever size, all the way up to hundreds of millions of dollars. Are they more protective in your space and more resistant to this new currency, or do you find that they're largely open to it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So they're all open to that type of transaction where we help convert it to US dollars, because that's very safe and that's what they want. In the very beginning, there was zero interest in taking a wallet-to-wallet transaction, which would be me sending you Bitcoin and in return I get the yacht. Now, so we went from zero in 2016, and now we're in 2022, and we have 5 clients in our list and our portfolio of listings that will accept a wallet-to-wallet transaction. And what's interesting about that, and I really appreciate what you said about Bitcoin, because we have sold about a dozen so far. Every one has been with Bitcoin. But what we're seeing now is we just had an owner the other day say, I'll take Doge. And they're willing to take these secondary coins. And when I say we have a handful, that's still represents about 1% of our total listing. So it's gone from 0 to 1%, which reflects that idea of the first inning. And I think it's going to be more and more common, especially when you tie in things like the blockchain and NFTs, which I think would be a neat way to carry title and transfer. There's all kinds of neat ways to securely take that part of the transaction and attach it to the blockchain, which I think is more of a second inning type of a conversation. So there's all kinds of neat ways for this to happen.
Yeah. You know, you mentioned the expansion of the currencies in your space, and just in preparing for this meeting today, coincidentally, just a few weeks ago in this building, RM Auctions, which is in the classic car automotive space, just downstairs had an auction, and we just found this a few hours ago. We were reminded all the different currencies, cryptocurrencies accepted by RM Auctions. You know, some of those are a little foreign to me, but one in particular, Jay, I wanted to ask you about is that second from the right, the USDC, which I think maps back to your stablecoin comment earlier. Can you tell us maybe first, what is a stablecoin? What does that mean, and what's significant about USDC?
I'll try to say it this way. We use the word tokenized to talk about a particular. A token is a way we express what I will say is the digital representation of a right. USDC is effectively a tokenized bank account entry that is interoperable. I'm easily able to send it, and they're easily able to receive it around the globe. And what you've seen is that USDC and other highly liquid stablecoins are now the link between traditional finance and the crypto assets. There's no reason why it can't be the link between other things. And that's why governments are starting to say, look, we really need to understand stablecoin and how it works. So let me give you an example of how important this can be. If you're a global company, and we should talk about the fact that this is a global phenomenon, which is why there's so much tension and pressure on regulation and other things. If you're a global company and you're trying to pay people in Singapore and you're headquartered in the United States, you need to plan that payroll 7, 8, 10 days in advance because of all the pipes it's got to flow through and all the places it's got to go to get to Singapore and get out to your employees. With the kind of technology that's underlying stable coins, you ought to be able to do that in a day. And think of the savings in time and in a higher interest rate environment that can come from that. So this is what has turned the mindset of regulators to this is a technology that we have to get our arms around.
I think we see that in our everyday lives. I think back to just what it's like when you receive a paper check. We all, I mean, certainly my small company, we receive a lot of paper checks in the mail, and there I am with my cell phone depositing it, or somebody at my company, and then it's a few days for the true settlement. If you did that on a Saturday morning, you might not see the funds till Tuesday in your bank account. And I thought about this irony the other day as we were going through that with our company, and then all of a sudden I had to pay my pool guy or something. It was like Venmo, boom, boom, and that, instant funds are there, the transaction's cleared. How much do you think? Maybe I'll ask you about this, John. How much do you think that's going to change the traditional securities process for, if I sell a stock and it takes 3 days, but a crypto transaction's instant? I mean, how much pressure is it going to put on the old line asset class?
So, and that's one of the things when we first got into this space, the sort of institutional rails weren't there for us to operate the way we do in the legacy asset classes. But I'd say over the last few years, this has really started to mature. So you have the DTCC, so the clearinghouse for stocks in the US, is actually working on blockchain technology to move that way. So we have real-time settlements at some point. You have a company called Paxos. They've introduced a product that can be on the blockchain and settle transactions and securities in real time. So this is going to happen. We'll end up getting in our younger generation of traders that grew up with this 24/7 trading or investing are demanding it on the legacy asset classes. So they're pushing companies like us. I need extended hours. I want 24/7 trading. So the whole industry is going to adopt this and start. We'll get there, but that's where we're very early in the process.
Yeah. Bob, you grew up here in South Florida. Family's been here seen this whole explosion in the yachting industry. But now South Florida has this crypto explosion, and thanks to John, we've got crypto bull in South Florida. An amazing stat, super cool, by the way. I was asking him earlier about the licensing and monetization of the crypto bull. Like, I want it on a necklace when I go to the Dare nightclub on Saturday night. I mean, that thing is cool. I love it. Muscular, aggressive,
Team out here, yeah.
Modern. And but Bob, why South Florida? What is in the water or in the air or in the environment here that has made this the capital for this industry?
I think it's a pretty neat thing when you have the public sector and the private sector working together on a mission like that. And we saw that in yachting years and years ago in the 40s and 50s when my grandparents were doing that. Boats couldn't fit down the new river. They tore down the Andrews Avenue Bridge. They made it wider. And you had this like real cooperation. And it made Fort Lauderdale the yachting capital of the world. So a part of that is going to be all the services and support and little small businesses that come together and just make that community of yachting happen here in a significant way. And I think that's happening right now here. So you have the public space and the private space working together missionally to make this happen. And of course, South Florida is very unique in its ability to attract an international audience. It's getting younger. We've been seen, of course, for decades and decades as the place you go to retire. I think this is sort of changing the trend of that. And I really do think that's the core of it, is just a good cooperation between the public space and the private space.
John, can you expand on that? You agree?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's really been, well, two things happening. One, you have an ecosystem here in Florida with the government's very supportive of business first, and it's really brought people here. I mean, the weather's amazing as well, and you've seen what happened with COVID. I think it just accelerated that entire trend. So you now have, young people from all over the country moving here, very tech-oriented. It's just an incredible ecosystem that's really exploded here.
I live in Southern California. Come to Florida a lot because I love it, and I love the attitude here. And I say that the response to ideas in South Florida is yes, and then let's figure out how we can do it. In fact, the reason we're sitting here right today, today is because of the leadership from Stacy and Bob and Gail and everyone saying, hey, we've got all these business leaders coming to South Florida for Formula One. How can we have something of business substance to offer them? And this is just a start. Hopefully we're doing this for the next 10 years. The answer to new ideas in California is no, and don't ever ask again. So it's always really inspiring for me to come here because of that attitude. And I think you're right. The environment here is just pro-innovation and pro-new ideas, and you guys have really embraced that. Jay, what do the next 3 to 5 years look like from your perspective in this space? Talk a little bit. You were the chief police officer, for lack of a better term, for financial regulation for 4 years. It's amazing how young you still look after all of that, by the way. But what can we expect in the regulatory world over the next few years? Well,
John rightly characterizes the issue that we're facing with this, which is, and I'll try to put it as simply as I can, raise your hand if I'm not doing it. In the U.S., coming out of the Great Depression, we took an incredibly protective view of raising capital for the general public. In effect, if you're seeking investments for the general public, where we have a venture, we know all about it, the general public only knows us and can see us, that is likely, highly likely to be a securities transaction, regulated at the federal level, where we have an incredible amount of obligations to you to provide you with comprehensive and truthful information. And that has been the deal in the United States for almost 100 years now, 90 years. The rest of the world has somewhat similar, but much less rigorous, both in name and effect, regulations. Along comes crypto, which is a global phenomenon. What are a lot of crypto projects? They are network projects, also a new phenomenon. When I raise money to build a factory, pretty simple, factory does well, everybody does well. When I raise money to build out a network, it's a little different. But when you're investing in crypto tokens, and we would be making a promise to you that we're going to build out a network that's going to make those tokens more functional and then therefore more valuable, that's a securities transaction that requires, under our laws, that kind of detailed disclosure, rigorous liability if we don't tell you the truth. So we now have this big tension that in the rest of the world, that's not the way they look at it. In the US, providing that information in a network development situation is not easy. It's not like, hey, my factory's going really well. It's hard to predict how that network is going to be built out. But it is nevertheless the law, and that's where we stand. And we will see how that evolves. My view was to try and tell everybody that's the law. Let's play by the rules until they change. There's some people who think that the law should bend. And then more complicating that is, once the network is built out and we no longer are raising money, it's probably not a security anymore. The best analogy that I have, do you mind if I go on?
No, please.
The best analogy I have is we want to make a play. You know, we need a producer, we need a theater, we need actors, we need all these things. We raise money from you guys by selling you tickets. And we let you trade those tickets amongst each other, and we sell them to you for $10 a ticket. We take the money, we put on the play. When we handed you those tickets, they were probably securities. You were buying them hoping they'd be worth $100 each. That was an investment in our efforts. 10 years later, the play's super successful. We're like on to our next venture. You go to the box office and buy a ticket for $100. That ticket's not a security. It's just a ticket. So at some point, as you build out a network, you build out a project, that right to go to the play changes from a security to just a ticket. That's how it's looked at in the law, but defining that in reality is difficult. So those are the challenges that we're facing from a legal perspective. Hopefully that's somewhat clear.
Very helpful. John, let's talk about those challenges. What do the next few years look like in your business with the evolution of regulatory oversight and evolution?
So for us, I mean, the first part, so when we started this, we were highly conservative, looking at the lack of regulation really to say, are these securities or not? So we went live with just the top 5 cryptos that I think everyone universally felt were less likely to ever be considered a security. But you saw all these other crypto exchanges come in listing every product imaginable that are clearly securities in a lot of cases, but being conservative, it's not competitive for us, right? Because we can't offer that same thing. But we've had to build out the legal and compliance framework to be able to internally verify, all right, we're okay with this next set of cryptos. So we're in that process now. So we'll be launching the next set, actually starting next month, and starting to scale that out. I mean, it's an evolving space. We have a lending operation for crypto lending as well, which is also an evolving space. And we've got new channels of business now as being one of the few brokers who also has crypto. It provides us a lot of capabilities to power a lot of different types of businesses. So we're now powering fintech players that want to launch their business on the back of us as the regulated entity. We have like organizations like United Way of Broward. We helped these guys learn about crypto, and their donors demanded, I want to be able to donate Bitcoin. How do we do this? We stepped in and helped teach them. So that's an entire new channel we didn't even think about. Wow, we can help power charities. Mm-hmm. You talk about other broker-dealers, FCMs, wealth management type platforms. All these players that need access to crypto, we're now in the process of educating them and trying to figure out, all right, where does the business go from here? How can we expand and really help bring this stuff forward? So that's really what we're looking at.
And how about you, Bob? I mean, I would think your early buyers or sellers with crypto were a bit more speculative than maybe they are today. It's just a currency to complete the transaction. What do you see this in terms of your business evolution?
Yeah, for sure. It's so we're seeing more charters, which is a little bit different, and we're having our very first conversations right now with a gentleman who is looking at buying his yacht with crypto and also paying his crew with crypto. And helping us pay his dockage with crypto. And so we're trying these conversations evolve in ways that you don't think about. And I look back on the very first time I started thinking about Bitcoin and I was talking about it. Even this conversation, if you were to look back in 10 years, we'd look like Katie Couric trying to explain what an email address was in 1998. You know, it's like it's this weird sort of constantly evolving thing, and so now we're talking about operational parts of owning a yacht, and would the crew accept it, and how does it make it safe for them? Also, making sure that payroll taxes, you know, just all that. So it's neat and exciting, and in the next 5 years will be some incredibly new version of that.
Yeah. I'm just trying to envision a crew of 15 or something that are all crypto,
Right.
enabled. I'm not sure how they'd get work done. They'd be talking so much. I find that people that invest or hold a lot of crypto, they're passionate about sharing it all the time. I don't know if you find that in your world. Just came from somebody the other day that that's all they wanted to talk about. But that's a good thing, Jake.
Yeah, but you're so right. Like it's humbling to have watched how this has changed. I went back to central bankers thinking this would die of its own weight, to, oh my gosh, this is a technology that we need to adopt. One of the things that people talked about all the time a year ago was terrorist finance, money laundering, using crypto for illicit transactions. Well, crypto is based on an immutable record. There's no better way to actually trace money than an immutable record. So if you can figure out how to solve that conundrum, it's actually, it facilitates that kind of regulation. Doesn't lead to evasion. So that's like another 180 in the last year.
Jay, at the SEC now, I know you're not there, but you were just there a few years ago. Does this dominate the hallways, and is this the number one issue there? Is figuring out how to get their arms around the immersion?
The short answer is no. Mm-hmm. There's just a lot of daily blocking and tackling. And one thing, people think of regulators as doing their thing, but just like any business, they have bandwidth limits. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I was really trying to figure out was, how can you have a crypto project that is funding the build out of a network that is a securities transaction? How can you facilitate that disclosure in a way that is modernized? Unfortunately, the pandemic got in the way. We needed to keep the lights on at the New York Stock Exchange. So there are things that come up that take your time. But
so let's kind of just table a little counterpoint here. I was watching CNBC the other day. I think it was a Friday. They were interviewing. I think they were reporting live from Berkshire Hathaway's annual meeting. I've never been. I don't think I've ever been to Omaha, but it was almost like a convention center with all the businesses that were part of Berkshire's holdings. And Warren Buffett, I'm sure you all heard it, has said things like that, he wouldn't hold $25 worth of cryptocurrency, and that Bitcoin was rat poison squared, and even Jamie Dimon at JP Morgan a few years back calling it worthless. What do you think the average investor today, what are they looking at in this world, and what is going to be the trigger to where those comments are totally a thing of the past, and we can all say, oh, Warren Buffett had no idea what he was talking about? Are we saying that now? Some of us might.
Saying that.
You're saying that. But there's still a lot of uncertainty. What do you think some of the tipping points are going to be for the average investor, John?
Well, I think it's back to what I started with. I'm really understanding what these different projects are first. Understanding Bitcoin versus everything else is critically important. And we talk about, someone like a Michael Saylor, which, MicroStrategy, they're on the opposite side of Warren Buffett. He, started moving his actual treasury, their corporate funds, into Bitcoin because they're afraid of inflation. I mean, you see what's happening. I mean, we're all living it. Bitcoin as the hardest asset, it's a better vehicle to store value. And if you can't outperform Bitcoin, why would you keep something in dollar or even put it in a different project? So, as sort of corporate leaders and understanding what that is as a money, it makes a lot of sense. It's not an investment like a company who's generating goods and actually producing wealth in that format. I agree with Warren in that sense, but it has value, and there's something really there to that one. Now, all the other crypto projects, like I said, you have to understand that just like you would any company, look at what they're actually producing to see if you buy into that idea and that concept, you think that has legs. I mean, there's some really exciting projects there that you really want to invest in, and today the only way you can do it is through their cryptocurrency until they are securities and you get a digital stock. But right now it's the same thing. So I think it's really just back to education and people really starting to learn what these are. And I think regulatory clarity helps for the institutional investors. A lot of these firms won't come in until there's more clarity.
Yep. Is there a lot of Me Too, Bob, in the space? Somebody hears, hey, my friend bought a boat or sold a boat in crypto, therefore, I feel more validated. Going back to the CNBC point, I just love the fact that it's on the ticker now. It's just part of the rotation, right? 5-year Treasury, NASDAQ, mortgage rates, and Bitcoin rates. I mean, is it just a comfort level that it's part of our daily conversation more and more, and we just get used to the fact that it's real, it's here to stay?
Yeah, for sure. I think the amount of daily transactions are going to rise not so much based on the value of Bitcoin on that particular day, but just the awareness and the comfortability surrounding it. And you do have Warren Buffett sort of supporting that worldview. It's just like any worldview out there. You try to find a really famous, smart person to support your camp, and he supports that camp. And Elon Musk or somebody else might support I think Sailor's a perfect example of that camp as well. But I think any business, part of the alliance, any South Florida business that wants to go to your client and make life easier for them, fundamentally is something to consider, which is why I think you should engage with BitPay or somebody that makes a transaction, whether it's a cup of coffee or a yacht, to go to the customer and say, this is how you want to pay, this is how you want to do business, I'm going to meet you there. I think it's just a good sort of spirit of how to meet your client, and I don't think that's going away. And I think the day Warren Buffett does sadly pass away, I think that camp is going to get a lot weaker because he seems to be the main guy that they point to say, are you going to really disagree with Warren Buffett? So when that day happens, I think, will that be the revolution is the day he dies?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So once he dies, it'll be. Okay. So then buy Bitcoin that day.
Yeah. But let me give you a use case for Bitcoin. Assume Bitcoin is accepted widely, globally, as something that people will take and trade and have. You live in Turkey. Mm-hmm. Turkey just had 70% inflation. Mm-hmm. Okay, so if you're there, how do you protect yourself from that inflation? It might be hard to get U.S. dollars. It's hard to get U.S. dollars in a foreign country, particularly any country that's subject to instability, because they don't want everybody running and trading their Turkish lira for dollars. It's bad for the Turkish lira. It makes things even worse. So they restrict your ability to do that. But Bitcoin, unless it's banned, has provided people with that sort of hedge against inflation. What may be happening, I'm not saying it is happening, but what may be happening is people are going to expect to be able to hedge globally. The crew. Others are going to, it used to be that a country could sort of tamp people down and keep their citizens locked into their own currency. This may be something that happens as a result of the globalization of crypto assets. And something I'm watching really closely, because it could be a sea change. Now, China clearly does not want that to happen. If there's going to be a digital representation of value in China, it's going to be Chinese controlled, because they see exactly what this could mean.
Right, but they've proven they can't stop it. Even though they banned it, the citizens there are still using it. You can't stop this.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
Yep.
It seems like, and John, I got to confess, I don't have your software. I probably should, but I don't have the charts and everything to look at. But it feels like in my life that a year ago, or maybe 2 years ago, the Bitcoin ride was like this. It was down, and then Elon sends out a tweet, hey, you can buy Tesla, boom, it's up, it's down. Trump says something, down, up. It feels like we're really starting to level out, especially given some of the turmoil around the world right now, and you look at the stability of the currency. Are you seeing that? The chart in my head, does that bear out?
It definitely seems like we've stabilized more. We're not seeing the wild swings to the degree we saw before. I mean, it's still more than a lot of the stocks you see, but I think it's absolutely going to start stabilizing. And as over time, every 4 years, the rate of new Bitcoin come in halves. Mm-hmm. It's a stable product, and over time, I think it'll be more like gold, and that volatility will dampen even further.
Yeah, awesome. Show of hands, how many of you hold Bitcoin currently? Quite a few. Wow.
It's funny, I don't own any, but here, you guys will like this. I teach a class at Penn, 50 MBAs, 50 JDs. Over 2/3 of them hold crypto assets.
It's amazing.
That's interesting. Jay, at lunch today, you said you had a story you wanted to share about the time you met Mr. Ross. Stephen Ross, of course, owns the Dolphins, and the facility out there has invested tremendously in this new event and that great facility. And you said, I got a story about it. So tell us about the time when you're the chairman of the SEC. You meet people randomly, I'm sure, restaurants,
Whether
meetings,
you want to or not.
whether you want to or not.
Yeah.
But tell us about that, because it.
And he's sort of an incredible entrepreneur. He really is. And but somebody said, would you please come over and meet Steve Ross? And they introduced me. They say, this is Jay Clayton. He's chairman of the SEC. And Ross goes, sit down. I don't get that a lot. I get it now, but I didn't get it then. And he said, Alabama, I can't believe how they get their players.
Wrong SEC. Yeah.
I said, Mr. Ross, I want to thank you for thinking I'm tough enough to be the chairman of the Southeastern Conference, but it's actually the Securities and Exchange Commission. Very clever guy. He said, I'm a private company.
Very good. Well, I think we should take some questions from our audience. I'm sure some of you might be curious with this amazing group of panelists. We have a few running around in the back with microphones to help amplify your voice. So there's a gentleman here with his hand up to my left.
Name is Eric Schneider. I'm a local Broward resident and an enthusiast in technology and crypto. My question is, 5-10 years out, my concern is about legacy. Bitcoin as being finite at 21 million. There's going to be a lot of lost passwords. Sure, the institutions are going to have custodial solutions. There's going to be such attrition and so much deflation of lost Bitcoin. There's probably more lost Bitcoin than the remaining 2 million that is scheduled out over the next 120 years to be mined. And I see nothing in press or regulation that's going to address this significantly growing future problem. Do you have any suggestions of how that gets tackled? We're all focused in the now, but this is going to be the problem in 5 or 10 years in a big way.
I want to throw that, thanks for your question. It's a great question. We've all heard this story of the gentleman searching for his hard drives in Europe somewhere and trying to find passwords. Bob, first transaction you took in, I'm sure a significant amount of value via Bitcoin. How paranoid are you about being able to identify passwords and security and keep track of that?
That's a good question. We have a lot of KYC protocol or safety, a lot of bank accounts, escrow accounts, so we're really, really tight on that stuff anyway. As a retail investor, though, that stuff freaks me out. So I keep my cryptocurrency in a cold wallet, and I have it printed out in a place my wife should know where it is in case something happens to me. But that is insane. I mean, it happens every day, and it will get worse. I would be the wrong person to figure out a solution for that, but it does make me kind of bullish on the remaining Bitcoin having, as it becomes scarcer and scarcer, the value increasing. Have you guys thought of a way to?
Yeah, well, this is part of the infrastructure that's building. I mean, we shouldn't be printing out things and saving them it's like putting your money under your mattress. I mean, this is insanity still. I mean, I have NFTs that are in different browsers everywhere. I mean, that's just not right. This won't be this way when we get to the second, third inning. There's firms like us where we've more centralized the process and tried to make it more like what you're used to, where, if we're transacting, for example, with United Way, they don't ever touch the crypto. It comes right into our account. We do the transaction back to dollars, and they get their dollars. There's zero risk for them. That's more what you're going to want in general, but that's against sort of the philosophy of what a lot of Bitcoiners are. They want to hold it and have it by themselves. That's fine, and there'll be private security capabilities and more storage solutions for like a retail customer. You don't necessarily want to hold this in your house. But it'll evolve. It will absolutely have to get better. I mean, the everyday people are not going to be buying NFTs and doing phantom wallets on their browser.
Yeah. Jay, is there a role for government in that aspect of the business? I mean, sort of like the government locksmith?
I think very much so. Let me give you an analogy to if you lose your stock certificates, there actually is a legal process where you go and demonstrate, I lost my stock certificates. You have a ledger. I'm that missing piece on the ledger. I put up a bond. And there is a way to do it. So as tokenization of assets moves more into the traditional space, I think you'll see solutions develop much more quickly.
Great question, though. Thanks for asking. There's a gentleman in the front here, Bob.
Thank you very much, Bob Swindell. Jay, you touched on this, for a moment, but I've heard the same analogy that, the blockchain is anonymous and it's a, non-governmental controlled currency. But the blockchain technology, you have this digital ledger that you should virtually be able to track every transaction so that the nefarious, side of this doesn't come through. What's holding that up? Is that going to be the case, or is it really going to remain anonymous in that, people can trade Bitcoin without any oversight?
So I'll use a crude analogy, which is, the James Bond Swiss bank account with a number. That's original blockchain. It was a number, so it was anonymous. But there's no reason why to get on to the blockchain, you don't have to produce something that allows you to be identified. Just like you get a number at the Swiss bank account, at Citibank or Bank of America, you got to show your passport, and that's all locked into your account. You could have all that locked in to your participation. The technology could facilitate that. It's just, this is how it got started.
Yeah, and on if you do any business with a very legitimate real estate broker, investment banker, yacht broker, we do have to do KYC. I keep saying that like everybody would know what it is, but KYC, of course, is an acronym that says know your client or know your customer. So the burden's on us to make sure we know who the beneficial owner is. We request passports, and that's true for a Bitcoin or a crypto transaction or cash transaction. So the burden is on the middleman to make sure we know where that cash or that crypto is coming from.
Yep.
But I believe that if you do this right, the cost of all those processes, if you're doing it on a permission blockchain, goes way down.
Yeah.
John, I see a lot of nodding. Are you largely in favor of?
Well, our team wouldn't be in favor because we're having to there's new regulation coming that requires us to do just what we were talking about. We have to report and know who all these transactions are going from and report that back to the centralized government. So it's, to be in this world and in the institutional rails and other regulations, it's much more transparent. But that doesn't take away the fact that you could be transacting just with a number behind the scenes without using us or a firm like us.
Yeah. And that's the challenge.
Yeah.
I'm Mike Sluka with N Perspective CFO Services. The comment about Bitcoin being inflation-proof, my clients are all worried about inflation. If I crack open my Macro 101 Econ textbook, it was too many dollars chasing too few goods. Isn't inflation still exist regardless of the currency that you use to acquire goods?
I'm not going to say that I'm 100% convinced on this,
Okay.
but because there's a finite supply of Bitcoin, but an infinite supply of dollars, as they print more dollars, the value of Bitcoin should go up.
Okay.
If it stays as widely accepted, that's the notion.
Okay. I get it.
Yeah, I would actually recommend if anyone wants to learn this, there's a book, The Bitcoin Standard. It's sort of the Bible for this, and it explains the history of money and what Bitcoin really is versus fiat and why it is inflation-proof. It's a great read.
Question in the back, sir.
Hello, good afternoon, gentlemen.
Hello.
Good afternoon, everyone. Mark Dwayne Thompson with Locality Bank. We're actually a newly formed digital bank in Fort Lauderdale, downtown Fort Lauderdale, as of January. You mentioned the rules that everyone plays by. So obviously, we're a bank and we're regulated by OCC, FDIC, insurance, and everything there. So if everyone's playing by the rules right now in the crypto world and we're still in the physical currency world, if the rules are going to be changed, is it going to come from out here in the finance world, or is it going to come from the legislature that's going to say, hey, we have to change the rules now that everyone's going to be playing by what it's going to be 5 years from now or 10 years from now or 20 years from now, as the gentleman right there was saying. So I guess I'm just saying how the rules are going to be changed and who's going to change them.
Seems like a perfect question, Jay, for the rules are. Who's going to lead here? What's going to lead?
Like most multifaceted problems, everyone wishes that just one person would take charge and set the rules and solve them. Not nice, but not possible or practical. One is because whether it's the SEC or the FDIC or the Treasury or their counterparts around the globe, everybody only has limited authority. only have authority to act in certain areas. So the truth is, it's going to be a combination of all of those things. One is, how coordinated can they get? But there's some problems where you need the legislature to act. One of them goes back to the question about lost keys and the like. That's a problem where the current law is not adequate. How do you custody? How do you secure? How do you make up for lost crypto assets? We need a legislative solution to that. That's my view. But a lot of it will be driven by the marketplace. I mean, the journey that we're on with this technology is going to be driven a lot by how retail people react to it. And, we've just had a huge amount of money printing. I just said we had 70% inflation in Turkey. I think that makes the uptake of crypto more likely. So, I hate to give you an answer of, we'll have to kind of see, but it's sort of like the internet. Trying to predict where the internet would end in 1988, you would have gotten it really wrong.
Bob, I'm interested to hear your perspective on this because in the yachting industry, it makes me think about boat registrations. As a boater, the last thing I want to do is register my boat with the state of California.
Right.
Because it's lethargic, it's unreasonable, it's impractical, it's a pain in the ass. and so I registered not offshore, but I registered Coast Guard registration, I guess, with my vessel. Do you, and in your world, registration, there's a process and a game and an environment, a whole industry around boat registrations, yacht registrations. And I imagine that's the path of least resistance for a lot of owners. Do you see crypto rules evolving in the same way where we're going to kind of push the problem around to the point of least resistance until all walls close in?
Yeah, I think the underlying sort of what makes all this possible is because of the blockchain, and that is going to lead. We just heard news a few months ago of a home selling in the Tampa area as an NFT, and it was a neat thing. It made me immediately, that was my aha NFT moment, where you have what you're able to do is point to the title of the house to the rightful owner using blockchain technology as an NFT, and that's sort of a different conversation. But it was a really neat. What if you got the U.S. Coast Guard involved, the state of Florida, all the different, and you talk about different jurisdictions. I mean, you really have this dance of people that would have to get involved. But I think it would ultimately provide a better client experience, and I would be shocked if my kids, when they buy a boat one day, aren't using the blockchain to secure title and to really have, and to make the process of buying a boat. That guy in Chicago that said, I'd like to buy a boat tomorrow, that couldn't happen now, but it might happen in 20 or 30 years because of the blockchain.
Right. And John, you spoke about it already, but government asking you to do more reporting and all of that. Is this an opportunity in your space? The more you lead on rules, the less attractive your platform becomes? I don't know. Where do you sit on that?
Yeah, well, it's a little tough. It's sort of the same comment. Unfortunately, when you're a bank like us, you're highly regulated. So I feel more of a disadvantage being regulated because you have these crypto startups that they just they don't know the rules or just ignore it. They just jump in and do whatever they do and hope not to get in trouble. I mean, we can't do that without risking our existing business. It's tough, and that's why we're really pushing, and it is a two-way street, working with the regulators. I mean, we got to push and get an answer to this so that we can innovate.
Yeah, great question, though. Another one here.
Kevin Schachter with Northern Trust. First-time caller, a long-time listener. Just, I guess I had always thought with cryptocurrency that it was going to be a store of value going forward. But it seems like it's been lockstep with the markets and sometimes going down a lot more than the markets. Today, I think the markets were down about 5% and Bitcoin's down almost 10%. So is it truly a hedge? Is it not? I mean, is it just people buying and selling? There's nothing behind it. So I'm trying to understand a little bit more about the reasons.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, you have a large segment of the crypto, particularly Bitcoin holders that will never sell. But you do have a lot of noise in a smaller percentage and will move the market. It's still, when you think about what's going on right now, the market sells off, people panic, and they want to still go back to cash. So that still happens with a large majority of sort of traders, and those investors aren't that locked into Bitcoin for the long term. It's more of just a panic move. But I think over time that will stop.
Any other questions from our audience? Yes, ma'am.
Hi there. My name is Holly Svekis. I'm from the Sun Sentinel. I'm on the advertising side, not the editorial side, so don't be nervous on answering this. I feel like we're in kind of like the Ghostbusters crossing streams, and I'm having trouble wrapping my arms around currency versus investments. So there's a tax implication on selling the crypto, but it's really treated as a currency. So is there a future where on the retail side, it is not a tax event and it's more of a transactional currency event and not having some sort of tax implication, if that makes sense?
It does. It does. And these things are always hard to give you precise lines. But I talked about a stable coin, a token that is tied to the US dollar, one to one, but facilitates international transactions. Governments who want to encourage the use of stable coins would do so also using the tax code and say that we're going to treat that like a currency so that you're not going to incur capital gains on transactions, as opposed to what you may do with Bitcoin if it continues to be viewed as digital gold.
We've got time for one more question, I think. A couple. Sorry, Gail. Two more. We have time for two more questions.
Hello, Josh Vandegrift with Wells Fargo Bank. I'm curious to follow up on the stablecoin question. Do you see a scenario where the U.S. would come out with its own form of digital currency to replace the dollar?
You want me to do that one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
way that you have dollars in your wallet, cash, that's theoretically a claim back to the U.S. government. That cash, literal cash, is actually your only direct connection with the U.S. government and the dollar system. All your other dollars are through a bank at some point in the system. The question is, are we going to take those entries that are with the bank and make them directly with the Federal Reserve or some other U.S. government entity? My own view is no, for two reasons. One is, from a just political perspective, the Federal Reserve has never had really any kind of daily direct connection with U.S. citizens. And to change that would potentially be destabilizing, okay, in just how monetary policy and everything else works. More practically, the system where we have banks between citizens and the Federal Reserve works really well from two perspectives. One is regulation. It's much easier as a regulator to tell somebody else to do it than to have to do it yourself.
John.
Correct?
Nodding
Correct?
assuredly, yeah.
And two, technologically. Running a central bank digital currency would be a technological lift that I don't think the Federal Reserve could handle. What you can do is you can ask Wells, JP Morgan, Bank of America to handle that. Does anybody have any idea how much money a JP Morgan spends a year on technology? 10 times that? More? Maybe as much as $8 billion just on security.
Wow.
So actually decentralizing that is a great strength of our financial system. So for those many reasons, I think that a true central bank digital currency, we all have a wallet with the Fed, is unlikely to happen. Now that I said it, it's probably going to happen.
This is your Katie Couric moment.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Thank you.
Such a great analogy.
Thank
One
you.
more question here. Yes, ma'am.
Right. Thanks. Hi, my name is Peggy Johnson. I'm CEO of Magic Leap, sort of the OG here in South Florida in tech. And so we make an augmented reality headset. We see a lot of transactions that'll be happening in the metaverse. And I think it's fine to buy a yacht with Bitcoin, but maybe a cup of coffee will be a little bit different. So I was wondering, maybe, John, you're opinion on when the Lightning Network will actually be a reality, when we can?
Yeah, I mean, it's here. It's just, I don't know that a lot of people want to spend their Bitcoin right now. I mean, they'll do it here, but actually what we're seeing is more people want to hold their Bitcoin and borrow against it. I don't want to spend it. So, I mean, although the payment rails will be there, we'll be able to handle faster transactions, a lot more transactions like you're doing today in the existing infrastructure. But, until you're really adopting Bitcoin as a currency, which, that's probably not likely in the short term, you're just not going to spend it. So to me, that's more gimmicky, it feels like, that you're spending it. And it will make it easier, and people want to donate for it, and the rails will be put in place. That's more my opinion.
Bob, have you spent any of your Bitcoin?
I have. Yeah, we do. And by the way, I bought a pair of Magic Leap, not with Bitcoin though, but I did. I have. Actually, the very first time I ever spent Bitcoin was on the back of a boat. I was with some friends. We did a little weekend charter thing. And if you ever charter a yacht, or a boat in our case, I like to say yacht because it sounds cooler. But it's like the ultimate end of the check, who's going to take care of what, and gratuity and all this stuff. And the very first crypto transaction was to a friend who was handling the gratuity, and I sent it his way.
Oh, cool.
And it was on a Sunday. It was instant, and yeah. So that was the first time that I had done it.
And then cash to the crew, or did he pay it forward?
I'm assuming he did pay them in cash, but he's the kind of guy that may have just kept the whole thing for himself instead.
Yeah.
Need to look into that.
Well, that seems like a great way to wrap up. I think my takeaway from all of this will be it's complicated, but we're getting there. And I love the Katie Couric analogy, the email back in the day. I feel like we're living that in this moment, and we're going to laugh at ourselves.
Burn this.
Yeah. Want to thank you all for joining us, and a big thanks to our panel. We've got a reception. Big round of applause.
Good job.
Fascinating to get your insights. We're going to hang out in the foyer for a reception after this. I think our panelists are able to hang out. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate. I think they're here to answer. We're all learning together. And thank you personally to both the GFL and Visit Lauderdale for having us here and taking the leadership to recognize the opportunity of the convergence of crypto and Formula One on this historic weekend. It's great to be here.
I think the next one of these we should do is Metaverse. Huge fan. I want to do that. So I want to.
Oh, that's a great idea. Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, everyone. And thank you, Gail. And we'll see you all in the foyer.